Okay, so this is a question I've been asked to solve, which is a worded problem involving polynomials and a maxima. So first of all, before you solve something like this, you need to identify your important information and establish some equations. So my important information is that I'm working with volume. I have a sum of its length, width and height equaling 8. And that's actually all I need. It doesn't seem like much information, but because we know it's a rectangular prism, we know that volume equals length times width times h, and we've been given some information about those dimensions. So we know that length plus width plus h equals 8. We also know that the length has to be twice the width, so length has to equal 2 times w. So if we put that back into this equation up here, we get 2w plus w plus h equals 8. So therefore h equals 8 minus 3w. Now how did I get this equation here? Well, I combined the 2w and w together, and I just moved them to the other side by changing their positive value into a negative one. So back to the original volume equation, we can just substitute all that back in. So volume is going to equal 2w, because that is my L, times w, times 8 minus 3w. Now I'll just reiterate or repeat where I got those values from. So 2w is my length, so that's up here. W hasn't changed, w just stays as w. And then 8 minus 3w is my h value, also in the equation. So now I'm going to expand this to get our polynomial. So the first two terms simply make 2w squared. Then I'm going to multiply that by this last bracket to get the final equation. So 2 times 8 is 16, and we don't have another w next to the 8, so it's just 16w squared. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. W squared times w is w cubed, and this is the polynomial I'll be working with. Now there are two different ways you can proceed from here. If you're a calculus student, you could take the derivative and solve the roots at the derivative. Okay, so I've got my first derivative, and obviously then you can solve for the root. So w is going to equal 16 on 9, which put in a calculator is 1.78, or approximately 1.8. If, however, you have not got that far into your mathematics, you can enter it into your calculator and find the maximum, and it tells you that at the maximum, the x value, or the w in this case, is 1.78, or 1.8. Now from before, we know that our length has to be 2 times our width, and we also had the equation relating the height as height equals 8 minus 3w. So we just substitute this value in for all of those. So 2 times 1.8 is 3.6, and 8 minus 3 times 1.8 is 2.6. Now if you want to check that, you can just substitute it in and see if they add up to 8. Now why should they add up to 8? Because originally it told you that they add up to 8. So you can add them all up, 1.8, 3.6 and 2.6. You add them all together, they do indeed equal 8, so you have the right solutions. Now make sure you do it to the nearest tenth, because that's what the question asks. That's why we rounded from 1.7 to 1.8, because that's in tenths, and that you actually answer the question in context and with units. And those answers are: your width is 1.8 inches, your length is 3.6 inches, your height is 2.6 inches. And that concludes the problem.